All right, let's dive in. I have a friend who has a 16-year-old daughter. She's a younger friend. And apparently she thought it would be a good idea to take her daughter and a couple of her daughter's friends on a mountain weekend at a mountain cabin. I don't know what she was thinking. Well, they get there, and she piles in the car and dumps them off at the cabin and goes off to the grocery store, comes back, and she's unloading the groceries, and she realizes there's a deer really close. Not close enough like nose in the trunk close, but very close and not threatening, just very curious, unafraid, watching her, and they would lock eyes, and she'd take some more groceries in, they'd lock eyes, she'd take some more groceries in, they'd lock eyes, she'd take some more groceries in, and finally she just stood there with the deer for a minute and then locked up the car and went in the house, where she found all the groceries had been put away, the bags folded, and the girls were putting the last of the soda in the refrigerator. She was flabbergasted, right? And she thanked them effusively, and one of them just, flipped her hair and said, "Well, that's what friends are for." And it was. Apparently, it was just a love fest of a weekend, and that brave mom got a lot of love from those three girls, too. Now, those are the kinds of friends you want to have, and the kinds of friends you want your kids to have, right? Maybe that is what friends are for. To help us. It sometimes seems to me that some people are put in my life just for a season, just for a reason, just to be what I need when I need it. And I have found myself on the giving end of that equation too, where I have someone in my life just about the time I've got some way to help them, and we're friends for a while, and then that fades away. But then there's the deep friendships, the ones you can't explain. There's no pattern to how they shape. There's no pattern to how they come to us. We don't really choose them so much as we wake up and realize that we have a deep spiritual connection to a friend we might even call an anam cara, a soul friend. Anam cara, a soul friend. And that's the kind of friendship that Jesus means when he says to his disciples in John 15, "I call you my friends." I'm going to read that to you. Here, this is our foundational scripture for today. "This is my commandment," Jesus says, "that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You're my friends if you do what I command you to." And now, interesting, he's not saying check off all the boxes, dive into the Bible and see everything I said and make sure you make a rule out of that. He's referring specifically to the commandment he just gave us. You are my friends if you love one another as I have loved you. There's just nothing like a vague commandment to encompass so much. I don't call you servants any longer because the servant doesn't know what the master's doing. I call you friends because I've made known to you everything I've heard from my Father. You didn't choose me. I chose you. Isn't that how friendship works sometimes? Is you don't really choose someone. It's more like you choose each other. You might be surprised to find that the negative attitude toward the idea of having Jesus as a friend, and you'll hear people sometimes mock Christians like we're a bunch of 4-year-olds with an invisible friend when we say we have a friendship with Jesus. That really only goes back to Sigmund Freud. Bless his soul. The man did a lot of great stuff. Personally, I think he was wrong about this. He felt that God, the invisible friend, was an illusion, a fairy tale, a projection, an infantile prototype. Doesn't everything sound more important when it's got a scientific name? And a neuroses. Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay if my friendship with Jesus is a little bit childlike. I think Jesus said something about coming to God by being more childlike. You can't scare me by telling me I have a neurosis, because I've known that for years. And yes, I need God to help me manage not just my physical health and my social health, but my mental health. I'll tell you about that in a minute. We'll talk more about rules next week when we talk about Jesus as teacher. But the Jesus we want to experience is the Jesus of friendship. And there are no real rules about friendship. Most of us don't have a list of things that you have to tick off in order to be our friend. And we find ourselves friends with people we could never have expected to be friends with. Calling friendship juvenile is misguided at best, and it can be harmful because it teaches adults that those honest, open, playful, confiding, trusting relationships that they now know are dangerous are something they should keep out of their lives. And children haven't learned that yet. When we're kids, we know what a friend is. Someone who's fun to be with and who's trustworthy. Fun to be with and trustworthy. That's kind of all I need Jesus for. I just need Jesus to be my friend, to be fun, to help me enjoy my life, to make sure that the joy gets bubbling up in my life. And I need Jesus to be trustworthy and to help me feel safe in my life. That's a hard thing because most of us spend our time asking ourselves, well, who is my friend? How did I get betrayed by that person? Why didn't I see that coming? Why is that person choosing them as a friend instead of me? Why don't I have more friends? Am I a good friend? Am I a bad friend? Why are my friends not any more long-lasting than they are? What's wrong with me that I don't have more friends? Might be easier if we took that child's point of view, especially when we think about soul relationships with God, with Jesus, and with others. We could do worse than notice that Jesus is playful company. We have the stories. Apparently, he liked a good time. He didn't mind provoking other people, kind of poke them in the ribs a little bit. He certainly enjoyed a good party, and he was trustworthy. Trustworthy. Maybe the reason Jesus welcomes children is because they haven't yet fallen into the pyramid of domination that humans always seem to make their world into. How many times have you said to yourself, why did that person treat me like that after all I've done for them? We have a tendency to be transactional in a lot of our relationships. And that's human history from the beginning, is that our relationships and our friendships have more to do with give and take, and usually more take than give. But friendship with God is a different thing. Different thing. And friendship with God is foundational to our faith. Foundational. It is central to the promises of God and the faithfulness of the people. Friendship with God is not a biblical side story. It's not a pleasant thing to say. It's at the heart of what's going on here. It is the name we could use for what the covenant is. It's foundational to the covenant, which is how the Bible describes our relationship with God. A covenant involves give and take. It involves friends, companions, intimates. Friendship with God is the foundation of the biblical covenant. It's not about power over, it's about power with. And I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. The Bible tells a different story about friendship than our culture does, especially a spiritual friendship. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. In every generation, wisdom passes into holy souls and makes them friends of God and prophets. Moses and Abraham are specifically called friends of God in Isaiah 41 and in James 2. The Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. That's in Exodus 33:11, and just 9 verses later, we realize that that is a rare intimacy, because most of the time, if you see God face to face, you die. And so when God establishes a covenant with our foremothers and our forefathers through Moses, God says, we're on a new footing now. Face to face. Friends. These are rare intimacies. And you'll recall Jesus said, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. He wants that intimacy among us and between us and God and with him to not be rare at all, to be a part of our lives. Friendship with God, friendship with God. Because friendship with God removes Jesus from the domination systems, the hierarchical pyramids that we live in and that Jesus really lived in. This is, our culture isn't structured quite as badly as his. But in Jesus' day, there was a place for you. There's a pyramid. And except for the guy at the top, which would have been the emperor or the king, everybody owes the person above them. Nobody up here owes anybody down here. All the people at the bottom owe stuff up there. And it's not really a pyramid, it's more like a sombrero. There's the guy at the top, and then there's a few elites, and then there's everybody else. Right? And Jesus is saying, I made you my friends. I made you my friends. He's doing something really, really radical here. He is, he's not saying to people, gee, I like you, you want to come to my next birthday party. He is restructuring the culture. It's really hard for us to hear that because first of all, we tend to take friendship fairly casually. And so when we hear Jesus say, I call you friends, we think, well, yeah, because y'all are friends. You sit around the campfire, you tell stories, you eat barbecue, right? That's not what Jesus is doing. He is upending the whole power pyramid. That's why in Luke 7, Jesus says to the authorities, the Son of Man is come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, by which they are not complimenting him. They are saying, you have stepped down out of the social strata to which you belong as an educated teacher, and you are hanging around with ne'er-do-wells and people you ought not to be around. In other words, why are you so enchanted with this guy who's voluntarily taken himself to a lower status than he properly belongs in? The Romans don't crucify you because they don't like who you drink with at the tavern. The Romans crucify you for your choice of friends and because the crowds of your friends disrupt the status quo. When you start saying people at the top have an obligation to the people at the bottom, that wasn't just a heretical opinion. That was outright heresy. People's positions in a society were assigned to them by God, and they had no right trying to change that. Jesus, and especially his followers, and especially after their death with their crazy ideas about friendship and community and sharing and loving, were not just disturbers of the peace. They were atheists. They were traitors. They were insurrectionists. I don't think of my friendship with God as daring or dangerous. Maybe I should. One of the things we learn in Scripture is that it was dangerous. That's why some people turned back. In John 6:66, because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. Right before this, Jesus has just given them a very difficult teaching, having to do with the body and blood and eating the body and blood. It's kind of esoteric sounding, but basically it means you get committed to other people in a way that lets you be willing to be sacrificed. So Jesus then asks the 12, do you also wish to go away? And Simon Peter says, well, where are we going to go? Really? Where are we going to go? You're the ones with the words. You're the one with the words of eternal life. We're in. We are here. There's no place else for us to go now that we have found you. And that's because there's a deep spiritual friendship at work here. A deep spiritual friendship at work. The Gospel of John seldom, in fact only twice, mentions Jesus' inner circle of the 12. He mostly talks about the disciples and the followers. And some scholars speculate there's 70 of them, some speculate there's 100 or so, but they're starting to thin out. They're starting to thin out. And so the 12 now begin to appear as a faithful remnant. Those for whom this spiritual friendship with Jesus is so deep, they can't walk away from it even when it gets dangerous. And we can understand that. Most of us let go of friends who are dangerous. Sometimes we need to. We let go of people who are too much work or hurt us too badly. Sometimes that's what we need to do. We walk away from people who don't give us what we thought we wanted from them. And most of us have been abandoned in our turn by people who needed or wanted something we could not give them. And I'm not talking about the natural comings and goings of friendship that flow and ebb. But we have, haven't we, experienced the loneliness of losing a friend, and that loss hurts our soul. And we carry that hurt for a long time. And the promise of Jesus is, I am your friend. I will not abandon you. If you follow my path, you'll be with me. I will not kick you out. I will not kick you to the curb. I will not leave you behind. But this friendship with God, this friendship with Jesus that we are offered is work. Deep, sacred, spiritual friendships are work, and they change us. They change us. We talk a lot about Jesus as a change maker. Here, as you know, we talk about church as a change-making church. We talk about us as change makers in the way of Jesus. And we talk about that because when we are in a friendship with Jesus, it changes us, and it changes what we do, and we then change the world. And what underlies this call to action, this invitation to make your faith your core commitment in life, is a deep love for God and a longing for an experience of God's love. So think for a minute, who has changed you? Who has changed you? Do you have a friend who's changed you? Someone who's been a soul friend? Who invested in your whole person, body, and spirit? Have you been changed by being a friend? By being a friend that, to your surprise, was willing to do something you thought you would never do. Not just help or have fun, but a friend who is deeply committed to someone else's whole personhood, body and soul. It's rare, and most of us have only a few over the course of our lives. Just about 20 years ago, I had a full-on emotional meltdown, and with good reason. Some things had happened in my life that I could never have imagined, and it really just cut my legs out from under me, and my mental health took a swan dive off the high dive. And I had two friends who helped me. They stuck with me while I negotiated my way back to full health. My church was amazing. I shared with them what had happened, and they gave me a 3-week medical leave to just get my mental health adjusted. And these two friends did even more. They checked up every day. They helped negotiate some of my doctor's appointments. They drove me places that I needed to go. And I came out of that even stronger because of them, because of these soul friends. Since that happened, one of these soul friends has largely drifted away, and we're still in touch, and we still have great affection, but our lives are not interwoven. But the other one, still an everyday part of my life. And their spiritual friendship helped me and healed me and made it possible for me to grow back stronger. And while they did that, they healed my family and my church. There was healing that happened in my family and in my church when these people reached out to help me. Because friendship is not just for the good of the friends, it's for the good of the world. Friendship is not just for the good of the friends, it's for the good of the world. It is sacred. It is holy. So I invite you to close your eyes for a moment and be in prayer with me. And I want you to just relax and ponder how your life has changed by the love of a friend. And ponder for just a moment how you have been changed by choosing to walk with Jesus, who offers you friendship. How have you been changed by extending soul friendship to someone else? God of grace and love, you show up in our friends and in our friendships. The brief ones, the lifelong ones, the ones that we extend help, the ones where we receive help, the ones where we grow, the ones where we are healed by companionship and laughter. Thank you that you sent Jesus to tell us, to open our ears and our eyes to his friendship. For you have called us friends, and we are healed. Amen.